Your life should not revolve around the opinions of a real or a hypothetical man.
What is going on, people, and welcome on today's episode. This episode is going to be pretty chilled. It's a conversation that I have seen so many people, talk about this year, and I feel like there are some people who consume this type of conversation and they are getting a different meaning to what people are trying to say, which is the reason why this lady is even going viral to begin with. There has been conversation of dissenting men, and there was a video that I posted a few days ago where this lady talked about how men can actually ruin your life. Like there are so many people, so many women out there with no degree because they go with a man. It is a lady's conversation. She's trying to have this conversation from a lady's perspective. I know both male or female gender can be a bad person. I feel like everybody knows that. But this lady just said girl talk, like ladies wake up. There are people today with no degree because they go with a man. Trying to just talk about how some people are struggling with their life now because they go with a man, especially people who get with men during their teenage/early 20 years. This lady made a video talking about how this conversation of the century men is such a bullshit take, and it's okay for you to just admit that you're so lonely and you want companionship. I feel like our video is going viral for several reasons, which I'm going to talk about after playing our own original clip. We will come back and talk about it. So without wasting much time, let's get into our video first before we now start talking about what the people have to say about our video.
You cannot intellectualize yourself out of the human desire to be loved, and that's why I think this entire decenter men, get hobbies instead of dating, it's all BS. And it's coming from people who are too embarrassed to admit how lonely they are out of some shame they feel for perpetual loneliness. I will explain. All over my For You page, and especially my Twitter, over the past 2 weeks, people have been discussing this topic, which granted is a reoccurring topic, that you need to decenter men. That phrase should exclusively apply to not teaching girls that the best thing they can do in life is become a wife and mother, in terms of don't center your life around being an accessory to a man's dream. Right? You should have your own personhood. What it does not refer to, and what I think it's very detrimental to tell single people that it refers to, is this idea that you shouldn't prioritize romantic love, right? Human civilizations across time, almost every civilization has prioritized familial love, platonic love, the love between your friends, and romantic love. It's the stuff that makes up our fairy tales. It inspires our hopes and dreams. We are wired to want these things. Humans are social creatures. We're meant to live in community with one another. We're programmed to love and to be loved. And pretending you can just watch these TikToks or read a couple of books get out of this human desire is nuts. And it doesn't even apply when you look at the ways we treat the enduring grief that comes with not having the two other types of love besides romantic, right? Because if I say I don't have a family, my parents are dead, I don't have siblings, or I don't have a good family, I don't have contact with them, people recognize that that is enduring grief that I will experience for the rest of my life. We acknowledge it on Mother's Day, Father's Day, the holiday season. We hold space to listen to the stories of those who are hurting, even those who have found family. Just this idea that there is something so painful about not having anyone who's related to you or the people who raised you. Similarly, we hold space for people who don't have any friends. People talk about how traumatic and genuinely heartbreaking it was to not have friends in primary school. It's something that still tinges when they're an adult. And then when people discuss how lonely they are because they don't have romantic love, then it's suddenly oh, you're so desperate. Oh, you need to get over that. You just need to get a hobby. Frankly, you should stop trying to pursue it. And it's why? And I never realized how hypocritical and cruel we were being to single people until I got into my current relationship. And I know that I'm going to marry my boyfriend. This is the best relationship that I've ever been in. I'm genuinely really happy. And it made me realize so much of the advice that we give to single people is just absolute bullshit. Telling people that a healthy, happy relationship is not something to want feels crazy, because if you are watching this right now and you are in a happy, healthy relationship, you know damn well that it's better than being single. Even the best times that I had being single, because there's something about being fulfilled romantically. And it's not something that can be made up for with my friends or my family, even though I have very strong friends and family relationships. It's just not the same. And that's fine. Why do we meet people with such disdain when they say they're lonely, especially knowing the onus we put on women especially to get partnered? This advice is never coming from people who are either really happy with being single or who are in happy, healthy relationships, it's coming from people who are fighting back the tears when they're making these videos or giving out this advice like, well, actually, I'm fine with my state and you need to be too because I don't want to hear anybody else talking about it. Like, that's very much the energy that it gives. And I'll end it on this note. There is a particularly disingenuous way that we talk about people who have been affected by the lack of romantic love when they acknowledge that it's because they don't meet the beauty standard, right? Like, yes, everybody is beautiful, but we know that some people they meet a specific beauty standard, and the people who don't, you have a harder time dating. Why are you making them feel bad for saying that? A girl got on my For You page and she was talking about the fact she was a heavy girl. She's talking about the fact that her weight made boys not like her. I've never been fat, but I know that that's true because I see how people treat other fat people. And the comments were gaslighting her. They were like, no, like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Like, you know damn well. It feels so mean, especially if you're a person who's like always gotten romantic connections or you've always been desired romantically, to tell a person who's never had that, who's like on the internet crying or in real life crying, like, I wish this happened to me, and be like, it's actually not that great. Like, you don't need it. Like, it's like looking at a starving person and then eating a hamburger and knowing that your entire life you've just like binged out of the most decadent foods and being like, the food's actually not that good. Like, you're fine. You don't need this.
That was the video she posted, you guys, and I would like to hear you guys' thoughts on what she said. I feel like one of the reasons why people are even tagging her, or even some people are even dragging her, was because of the title on that video where she said that conversation is BS. If you guys are lonely, just say you're lonely, and it's okay to crave companionship rather than recruiting more people into your coven. Just say you're lonely. It's okay to be lonely and crave companionship. But from our video, I feel like what she is referring to when they say the center men, it's not the same thing as what these people meant. They are talking about how you should not live your life as a lady. You should not make everything about your life to be centered around men. Like, your lifestyle, things you love, when you love to go out, it doesn't have to be about men seeking their attention, seeking their approval. Like, your life should be way more than that. You shouldn't put that above every other thing in your life. I think this is what they are talking about. But then let's get right into what people have to say about our video, because there are more people giving context to the center men conversation that has been going viral.
Human desire to be loved, and that's why
There's 2 points to be made here. 1, decentering men is about not valuing the opinions of men over everything else in your life. Decentering men means your life should not revolve around the opinions of a real or a hypothetical man. And I think you know this, and I think the phrasing of this video was just to generate engagement, which I guess there's nothing wrong with. But 2, more importantly, the desire to be loved and have companionship is human. The desire for romantic love over everything else is what is not okay. And a lot of people are going to say it's rich coming from someone who's in a happy marriage. But before I met my spouse, I was fully prepared to be single for the rest of my life. And I was 100% okay with being single for the rest of my life. I was planning on like maybe getting a house next to my best friend and we'd spend our lives together. Because what is important is not romantic love, it is love. And I keep saying this and people keep not comprehending it, but platonic love is not in any way lesser than romantic love. And when you think the most important thing in your life is being in a romantic relationship, you will accept whatever mistreatment comes in a relationship if you think it is inherently better than being single. And I'm not saying it's your fault if you're mistreated in a relationship. No one should be mistreated in a relationship. And at the same time, work on yourself, work on loving yourself, work on finding those connections, those non-romantic connections before you go into a romantic relationship. You can have a happy, fulfilled life and be single. And I really don't know how to explain this, but you can. The desire for love and companionship is human, but that love and companionship does not have to be romantic.
Like, decenter men, get hobbies instead of dating. It's all BS.
It's not that this creator's wrong. Not that anybody can be wrong about their own opinion about their own life, but this creator is conflating a lot of separate ideas, which, to be fair, she says she's responding to conversations on the timeline. So people on the timeline might be conflating ideas. And if that's happening, I just want to clarify. No one is saying, or no one should be saying, that you can't want love or you should not want to be loved romantic. That is a natural desire. The ideal of decentering men was never meant to be, you should not ever want romantic love. No one is saying go get a hobby instead of dating to cure your need for romantic love. What we are saying is that you're not going to find the romantic love that you want centering men, because that's always going to land you in relationships with people who want to be chased, who want to be the center of your universe. But if you just go live your life, babe, you're going to find the people that make sense for your life. The best way to pre-vet a partner or a friend is to meet them in an environment that represents a value that you want in a partner or a friend. If I want somebody who understands my love of art, then leaning into my passions of going to museum, art class, concert will bring me closer to meeting somebody that makes sense for me. But because I'm not going out with the intent to meet somebody, I do just get to live a full life that centers my needs, my wants, and my desires. But it also puts me on the path to meet somebody that makes sense for me. Instead of, let's say, going to Home Depot every Saturday morning in hopes that I find a man, even though I don't care about Home Depot. Decenter men means what it sounds like. I don't know, man. If you go looking for something, you're going to find it. But hopefully what the Risa Tisa stories taught us was that finding something is not the same thing as finding the right thing. If you can't hold space for yourself in a lover, that's not the movement's fault, babe.
You cannot intellectualize yourself out of the human desire to be loved, and that's why I think this entire
I would say the opposite side of this spectrum, the hustle and grind until you make it, until you become a high value man culture is also just as toxic as the flip side of what she is talking about, where you have people denying themselves the feeling that they want, which is connection and love with another person. And how it's manifesting itself for men is just like, well, you have to grind your way out of this state you're in, and after you become big, then you'll have access to X, Y, and Z amount of. But something that also never gets talked about in that sort of logic is like, what if you just never become successful? Does that mean that you can't have any type of communal relationship?
decenter men, get hobbies instead of dating. It's all BS.
I find this video really interesting because part of it brings up some pretty interesting points, and then another part of it goes into some really wild assumptions. And I'd like to sort of break those down. We can start with acknowledging that as social animals, yes, humans do need relationships and connections in order to live a fulfilling life. That's true. And romance tends to be a part of that. But it is pretty wild to see a video like this coming out like the week after a guy got on here and literally said women are going to have to settle because there's just not enough good guys out there. The people who are voicing their realizations that they're better off single than in a relationship are not coming at that from a place of like desperate copium. Instead, they are voicing like a statistical truth. Statistically speaking, if you're a hetero romantic woman, you are better off alone. So maybe OP found just like a great person that adds a lot of value to their life, and they're living the dream, and that's great. But that is not the reality for the majority of women. If you're trying to counter the already subversive message that like romance doesn't need to be a priority and that you can live a life without romance, that is rhetoric that is putting women in danger, like directly putting women in harm's way. And that's not a joke or an overreaction. That is just fact. And so, yes, we do need to hold space for people who, you know, are mourning the loss of romance in their life, or maybe even mourning the fact that they never even had access to it in the first place. But I do think that we need to be very, very clear. Things like the 4B movement or decenter men, they are not in themselves critiques of romance in its entirety. They are a critique of the paradigm that romance exists under in our current society. In the simplest way, the 4B movement is really about women saying, like, however you feel about this romance thing, it's really not worth dying over. And at the heart of it, that is a message that everybody needs to hear.
Cannot intellectualize yourself out of the human desire to be loved, and that's why I think this entire
Okay, this is my mutual, and I agree with her video, and I also agree with a lot of the videos disagreeing with her, and I think there's definitely a middle ground. I will say people are being ridiculous when they're acting as though there isn't the shaming of women who want romance. So I'm gonna say one thing, and then I'm gonna get to like back on topic. It's very interesting how like decentering men is only viewed within like a heterosexual view of romance, because in my opinion, even in a non-sexual, non-romantic ways, women can center men in their lives. Speak to anyone whose mother is like the eldest daughter and only has brothers in a family. yeah, you're going to see people center men, or like boy moms center men. They center their own sons in their lives. Um, it's very interesting. We don't add that to the conversation, and I think we should. But back at the topic at hand, I was having this conversation with my therapist, and as someone who is like a late bloomer and talking about fears, intimacy, all that stuff, I feel like the way she explained it is that people have had like a plethora of these experiences, romantic ones, intimate ones, anything like that, especially with men, are coming at this with the perspective of someone who've already had it. So it's kind of like they don't understand why romantic relationships are so serious. And you're talking to people who maybe have had little, maybe have had terrible ones, maybe have none. And so it's easier for you to say that like it's no big deal, or that you can just decenter men, or that you don't need romantic connection with anyone, let alone men. One thing that my mutual that I'm stitching here mentioned is like, one, there are people who just don't like fit the beauty standard. So like obviously the ramifications of them being single is different than some of you who do. And my therapist made a really good analogy of the fact that like we all do this, we all think about these things. It's just that some of you think that the thinking about it is more appropriate because you've already done it, and because you did it at like the correct stage to do it. So it's people who are not in the stage, like they've moved past this stage, like late bloomers, where you get like shamed for still wanting those things. And I think that like now it's kind of not like on this app, it's not like a stage of maturity, but it's like a stage of like enlightenment, where it's like shaming women who aren't like enlightened enough. I don't know, these are just some of my thoughts. Let me know down below.
Shame they feel for perpetual loneliness.
This creator got a lot of pushback and comments saying that she didn't understand what decentering men was really about, but I honestly kind of agree, because I see a lot of videos saying you don't need to date, get a hobby. What I think maybe isn't in this conversation as much as it should be is who your natural support system and network is going to determine how much you're going to desire a romantic relationship. The more friends you have, the more other people you can spend time with and who can take care of you. Not all of us have siblings. Some of us are only children. Some of us grew up in a more isolated area, a more isolated situation. So a lot of times, like I'll give an example that's actually from my ex. One of my exes, the ex that I dated the longest, really didn't understand the idea of going on dates with people you didn't know very well. And he judged me a lot, because he was like, how could you go on dates with people that like you haven't known for years, all this stuff? And I was like, not all of us have 3 siblings, 7 cousins who live in our city, all these different people with cookouts and family gatherings and people who cook and bring family over to enjoy their food. Not all of us have these like, third places in a way ingrained in our life. And so the desire for romantic love is not only going to be idolized from a young age as sort of an escape mechanism, specifically if you grow up as a lonely kid, but in general, we're going to be alone more. And so I think a lot of times the people who say, you don't need romantic love, just get a hobby, like, maybe I think sometimes you can either be more of an introvert, the people who say that. Some people want to be more alone. Some people, not me putting out my broken nail, some people have big families. They spend a lot of time with other people. They need more time alone. They don't crave that like extra experience, romantic experience, because they're fucking tired of people. Maybe they're around people all the time. Maybe they have a big family. Maybe they live with several generations. And I don't think that's always accounted for in this conversation about like how people date. Do you know what I'm saying? Like some people are brought up lonelier. Some people have less people around them. Some people have less family. That's also why like don't a lot of the time the people who become really dependent on people have less family. People who can be targeted for certain things are isolated, and it's a form of vulnerability. So like not always, obviously, but it can be in its worst. So I think sometimes what this creator was saying, this is like obviously like a tangent, but I think why I understand what this creator is saying is because getting a hobby for all people does not erase that desire or fulfill
their life. That being said, the more friends you have and the more community you have, I do think like it fills your time more, it fills your cup more. But not everybody has access to that. And it can take a long time to build that if you're not born with that. And not everybody is going to understand that if they were born with a community around them or a bigger community around them. It could be family, it could be location, there's all these different reasons, right? But anyway.
If you have come across the conversation of the century man, the center man, what is your take on it? I feel like these people are basically just saying don't let your whole life be around or evolve around a man. Get your life together, because either ways you might still not even be able to get it if you continue to center them. Like, let your life revolve around other things. Don't make all of your interests revolve around a man. I think this is what these people are saying, because I have seen tons of videos like this on TikTok, to be honest. You guys already know that the real conversation goes on TikTok, and the key part conversation goes on Twitter. So I have seen so many of it on TikTok as well. I feel like the points that made people start sticking to our video was the fact that you said people are making videos saying get a hobby, you don't need a man. I don't think anybody is telling anyone not to desire such thing. I haven't seen that video, but I've seen so many conversations on this same topic. So I would like to hear what you guys think. This person said lots of people also leave out the fact that luck is a huge component in finding a committed long-term partnership. You can earn all day, but unless it is in your favor, it will not happen. Don't make your life around them. Don't center them, because if you center your life around them, you are probably not going to get what you want. So I feel like this is what these people are saying, but I stand to be corrected. Let me know your take in the comment section. Another person said, it is normal to crave love and romance, but it is oftentimes out of your control. So having hobbies and platonic love is very important. Another thing or another perspective about this conversation that I saw was somebody addressing the fact that, there are so many people that they made their life all about man, or they center men so much that once they get into a relationship, they shut out every other person in their life. And when they are now going through a breakup phase, that is when they will remember that they have this type of friends. They want to talk to this person. They want to hang out with this person. Like, they literally made their whole life about the man they are with. Another person said, I just think realistically, it is easier to seek out community than seeking out one person to fulfill all your needs, even in a relationship. You should have hobbies and people outside of him. This is what they are saying. It's still the same. I still feel like all of these comments are still saying the same thing in different ways. Another person said, and the century men isn't about not dating men. It is about not centering your life, your lifestyles, and your decision around men or their approval. And let's not act like there are no people out there who do this. There are so many people out there who live because they want approval, they want the attention from men. Another person said, wanting love is normal, but obsessing over it is not. Unfortunately, I know too many girls like this, and they are hard to be friends with because they will drop you the second they find a boyfriend. This is absolutely true. That was the same example I said. I saw a video talking about how so many of them will literally shut out everybody in their life if they get a man. Let me know what you guys think about this conversation. Let's continue in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, and I love you guys.